I did over 3,000 fights to try and scientifically determine the strongest fire type in Pokemon Fire Red Leaf Green, and today I'm going to be ranking all of them. We start number 12 with the worst fire type, which is Vulpix, a version exclusive of Leaf Green. Now, this is the third part of a series in which I rank every Pokemon in Fire Red Leaf Green. So, I've already explained the system which I use to rank them. But as a quick summary, using one Pokemon, I challenge every important trainer in two different ways. One where I fight in a 1v1 against every Pokemon on their team, and then one where I fight against their whole team, getting 1 point if the Pokemon manages to beat every 1v1, and another for a sweep. With that, the points get turned into a score that takes into account its contribution for a full playthrough, and the moment that you obtain that Pokemon. If you still have some questions, you can watch the bug ranking video as I go more in depth on the explanation. Or you can read the Google Doc that's in the description. Anyways, for Vulpix positives, he has a really good ability. I don't really mention them much since they're usually either niche or don't really affect the battle. But some of the fire types have an ability that actually allows them to win fights, and that's Flash Fire. This ability increases the power of his fire type moves by 50% when getting hit by a fire type move. Now, since fire types resist each other's attacks, this would be something almost impossible to trigger. But that's when his second positive comes in, the fire type moves. Because Vulpix gets the classic Flamethrower via TM from the game corner, Fire Blast from Plane, and Overheat from Victory Road. But the one that helps trigger Flash Fire, boosts the power of his moves even more, and reduces the power of water moves is Sunny Day, which is obtained at the Safari Zone. See, usually fire types will use their fire type moves against Vulpix because of how little damage they will do against him. But if I use Sunny Day, their power gets increased, incentivizing them to use those moves and making Vulpix fire type moves do even more damage. With this, he's able to get one sweep, which was against Erika. Now, as you could see from how many sweeps he got, you might be wondering what's the problem with Vulpix. And truth be told, he's pretty garbage. Let's begin with the stats. The only one that's decent is his speed, being at 65. Everything else is just straight up bad, because even when using the strong combination of Fire Blast plus Sunny Day, it doesn't one-shot as many Pokemon as one would like. And that's if you manage to set up the Sunny Day, because with that bulk, you'll be lucky to survive one hit. The second issue with Vulpix is the coverage, because dear god, this move pool is awful. The only non-fire or normal type attacking moves are Iron Tail, which is too inaccurate, and Dig, which is too weak. And even going to the normal type moves, the best Vulpix has is Secret Power throughout most of the game, getting access to Double Edge if you want before the league, which doesn't do much when compared to the damage done by Vulpix fire moves. All in all, Vulpix is just one of the worst Pokemon in Fire Red Leaf Green, with a score of 26.62. Not on the level of Caterpie or Weedle, but not that far off. Just wait until you get a Firestone, then things get better. At number 11, this is going to be Ponyta, a Pokemon that's victim of circumstance alongside its evolution and two other Pokemon. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start first with the positives. For starters, his stats are amazing, with 410 base total. I think it makes him the first form Pokemon with the highest stats. But having a high base stat total means nothing if the distribution is awful. However, that's not the case with Ponyta, since he gets 85 in attack, 65 in special attack, and 90 in speed. I would have rather he had more special attack, but it's still fine. Moving on to the attacks, he has the classic moves that every fire type gets and that I've already mentioned on Vulpix, which are Flamethrower with 95 base power, Fire Blast with 120 base power and having less accuracy than Flamethrower, Overheat with 140 base power and having a bit more accuracy than Fire Blast, but with the added drawback of reducing the special attack of the user by 2 stages, and Sunny Day, which doesn't do damage but sets up the sun for 5 turns, boosting fire moves by 50% and reducing the damage of water moves by 50%. Something incredibly helpful for the fire types on this list. As for the other moves that Ponyta has, there's agility to increase his speed, which is not really helpful since he's already pretty fast. Bounce, a flying type move that works like fly but has the chance of paralyzing the opponent. Strength and Double Edge as his normal type moves. And last but not least, another move that can interact with Sunny Day. Solar Beam, with both Ponyta and Rapidash actually being the only fire types that can learn this move in this game, giving them a really cool niche. Finally, there's his ability, which is Flash Fire, the same as Vulpix, but he takes this ability even further beyond by being able to use special attacking moves more effectively. For example, by getting a 50% boost from the ability, another 50% from Sunny Day, and a 50% from Stab. Even though Fire Blast is not very effective against Charizard, Ponyta manages to KO him with 3 hits on the champion fight. With all of these tools, he manages to sweep the rival's Blastoise team before the league thanks to a combination of Sunny Day, Solar Beam, and Fire Blast. Now, I think I've talked more than enough about the positives of Ponyta. So, why is he so low on the list? Well, like I said at the beginning, he's a victim of circumstance. The circumstance being that he's only catchable after defeating Blaine on the Sevii Islands, making him, alongside 3 other Pokemon, the last ones that you can catch on a regular playthrough before beating the league. He's so late that the only fights that he can do are the Giovanni fight, the rival before the league, the Elite Four, and the champion fight. That's it. He was already pretty late on the original Red and Blue, appearing for the first time on the Pokemon Mansion, but at least there he was able to be caught after obtaining Surf. On the remakes, they decided to make Mount Ember and move all of the late game fire types to only be obtainable there, which made them so much worse. Nothing much to say since Ponyta is a very solid Pokemon. Maybe give him a bit more coverage? Like, Bounce is a pretty garbage move and didn't really help on the Bruno fights. But overall, he's just a sad Pokemon with a final score of 27.18. At least he's better than Vulpix. Now, after jabbing for a page and a half about Ponyta, at number 10 this is going to be Charmander. Now, thanks to being a starter, he's one of a couple of Pokemon that's available for every important fight of the game. In theory. I'll talk about that later. But for now, let's focus on the positives. One thing that makes him unique is his ability Blaze, an ability exclusive to the Fire-type starters, and Simisear for some reason. It gives him a 50% boost to his Fire-type moves when below a third of HP, which you can take advantage of by either reducing his HP before a fight, or by setting up substitutes mid-battle to get into the correct range. Another cool thing about the Charmander line is their diverse move pool, with the classic Fire-type moves, Mega Punch, Slash, and Strength as normal-type moves, and Dragon Claw, Rock Slide, Aerial Ace, Brick Break, and Dig for coverage. That's a lot of moves, and some Pokemon would really like to have even just one of those. With this, Charmander manages to sweep both Lieutenant Surge and Erika. And now, before discussing the negatives, I want to talk about something. So, how I tackle each Pokemon is that I only do the fights in which they are realistically available. So, for example, Machop is obtained in Dark Cave, meaning that it's a bit out of your way, but you can realistically catch one before Lieutenant Surge. Opposite to that is Hitmonlee, which is in the Saffron City Dojo. You can get to it after Lieutenant Surge, but you can't realistically catch one due to level caps. Now, about Charmander. Because he's a starter, unless you trade with another game, there's no way that he can fight against all of the variations of the rival. So he technically misses all of those fights, which in total there are 12. The one on Nugget Bridge, the one on the SSN, the one on Pokemon Tower, the one on Silphco, the one before the league, and the one as a champion. Another thing is that even though he has all of those moves and the ability Blaze, he's only a first form starter, so he isn't strong enough to be able to take full advantage of them, which is shown by the number of sweeps he got. He did beat a lot of individual fights before the league, but that was mostly because of the combination of Sunny Day, his decent speed, sometimes Blaze, and your Fire-type move of preference. However, he did struggle a lot after that. But with that, he gets a final score of 30.94. At number 9, this is going to be Rapidash, the worst fully evolved Fire-type. Look, I've already spent enough time talking about Ponyta, and this one is just a stronger version. The only differences are that he gets 15 points on each stat, he gains access to Hyper Beam, he now defeats Giovanni's Ace Rhyhorn, Bruno's Ace Machamp, Agatha's Ace Gengar, Lance's Gyarados, and the rival's Alakazam as a champion. He also now sweeps the rest of the rival fights before the league. But I guess this is a good time to explain how I'm going to evaluate the evolutions. So how it's going to work is that I'm going to take the performance of its pre-evolution until it's able to evolve. So for example, Charmander evolves after Brock at level 16, so I'm going to take his performance for that fight, and then when he evolves into Charmeleon, I'm going to take his new result. But anyways, with that, Rapidash ends up with a final score of 37.26. Coming in at number 8, this is Magmar, the second member of the Mount Ember Encounters and another version exclusive of Leaf Green. Now like Charmander, Magmar has some coverage options unique to him, as he has both Brick Break and Psychic alongside Strength as his normal type attack. His stats are also pretty decent. Having 93 speed outspeeds most Pokemon, and both 95 attack and 100 special attack make him a good mid attacker. This allows him to get sweeps against the Giovanni Gym fight and both the Venusaur and Blastoise rival fights before the league. However, that's where the positives end, as Magmar is a Pokemon with many issues. First is the place where you get him, which is once again Mount Ember after the Blaine fight. I've already said enough during the Ponyta section, so let's just move on. Second is that for some reason he's the only fire type in the game to not be able to learn Overheat, which honestly isn't that big of a deal, since I don't think there's a fight where he could have used the move. But he still misses on that Hyper Beam-like attack. Third is the ability. While almost all of the other fire types have an ability that increases the power of their fire type moves, Magmar doesn't, instead having Flame Body, an ability that makes it so that if the opponent makes contact with Magmar, they have a chance of getting burned, which does sound pretty helpful, but the chance of that happening is so low that he might as well not have an ability. And finally, there's his defenses. Because he invested so much stats on both attacks and his speed, his HP and physical defense ended up on the low end. Thankfully, he still has some pretty decent special defense, being at 85, but the physical one hinders him against fights like Bruno or Lance. Now don't get me wrong, he's still a solid Pokemon, and if he had been available after Koga like in the original games, he would have been maybe not a great fully evolved Pokemon, but definitely a good one. But unfortunately for him, his negatives greatly outweigh the positives, as seen in his low score of 37.77. Moving down to the number 7 spot, this is going to be Growlithe, the Fire-type version exclusive of Fire Red. Now, I want to start right off the bat with the abilities, because the two that he's able to use are amazing. The first one is Flash Fire, which as already discussed, ignores the damage from Fire-type moves and gives the one that Growlithe uses a boost, which helps a lot against the Charizards and Arcanines from the rival and the Blaine fight. The second ability is Intimidate, which as most of you already know, reduces the attack of the opponent by 1 stage. And this one is great, as it allows for an immediate advantage against like 2/3 of the individual fights, and it gives the chance to set up things like Sunny Day, Agility, or a substitute on the team fights without much issue if the first Pokemon they use is a physical attacker. Moving on to the stats, he has some good ones for a first form Pokemon, having 70 on both attacks and 60 in speed. Finally for the moves, he has the usual fire type moves, strength, and a setup move in agility, which did come in handy against Sabrina. Speaking of, Growlithe was able to sweep the Squirtle rival on Pokemon Tower, Erika, Koga, and Sabrina. Now going to the negatives, his coverage options leave a bit to be desired. They are not as bad as Vulpix, as he has Dig, Aerial Ace, and Bite, which in terms of typing, they are great, but they are only base 60 power, which, when you compare them against something like Stab Flamethrower, even against a Pokemon that resists it, they fall behind. It would be great if he got Crunch or Earthquake, but alas. The second is not so much an issue of Growlithe, but more so because it's a first form. And that's that he doesn't do that well on team fights, especially on the late game, both because of his just decent attack stats that make him need more than one attack to KO opponents, his not so stellar coverage options, and his poor defenses. But like I said, that's more of an issue of being a first form than because of Growlithe. Issues that may or may not get solved when he evolves. But with that, Growlithe ends up with a score of 40.82. For the number 6 spot, this is going to be Charmeleon. Just like when I talk about Rapidash, this one is just a stronger version of Charmander. However, this one doesn't get Hyper Beam. Instead, he gets 19 points of HP, 12 points to attack, 15 points to defense, 20 points to special attack, 50 points to special defense, and 15 points to speed. Very specific numbers, but that are enough to allow him to increase his number of sweeps. Now being able to beat the Squirtle rival on Nugget Bridge, the Squirtle rival on the SSN, the Squirtle rival on Pokemon Tower, Koga, and the Squirtle rival on Silphco. Weirdly enough, a bunch more rival fights, which makes me wonder how much his score would have increased if he was available for the other rival fights. He probably would have beaten the next spot on this list, which I'm sure would have been really frustrating for some people. But with that, Charmeleon ends up with a score of 46.24. Flying down at number 5, this is going to be Moltres. You see what I did there? Now, before I mention again how he's available late, in this case, it's technically a positive. That's because of two reasons. One is that in the original games, he wasn't on the Pokemon Mansion, but instead on Victory Road, meaning that if he was there on this game as well, he would have been able to fight only against the Elite Four and the Champion. The second reason is his level. All of the legendary birds are level 50 when you catch them, and because the closest level cap is Giovanni also at level 50, it wouldn't make a difference if he was obtainable earlier, since because of level caps, you wouldn't be able to use him. Something that cannot be said about Zapdos or Articuno. So in a weird way, being obtainable after playing was kind of helpful. Another good point of Moltres is his stats. Like, come on, he's a legendary. His base stat total is 580 and both of his attack stats are in the triple digits. Something that greatly complements his stab moves, as all flying moves are physical and all fire moves are special. Speaking of, he gets both the usual fire moves and both Aerial Ace and Fly alongside the setup move Agility. Now, I tried using Fly because it was stronger than Aerial Ace by 10 base power, but between the turn of doing nothing, the chance of missing, and the almost non-existence of a difference in power, Aerial Ace ended up being overall more useful. All of this ended up allowing Moltres to sweep Giovanni, all of the rival fights before the league, and Agatha. Now, you might be asking, how can Moltres, a legendary bird, be so low on the list? Shouldn't he be in the top 3? Well, you already know about the first issue, so I won't mention it again. What I will say is that both the legendary piece of Johto and the Regis from Hoenn are level 40 when you catch them. So, it makes you wonder why not the legendary birds. The second issue is his typing, because while his stab moves are great in terms of coverage, not only does the rock type resist both types, but they also give Moltres a 4-time weakness to those moves. This issue is greatly increased by his third problem, his other coverage moves. Besides his stab moves and his normal type moves, which by the way the best he has are both Hyper Beam, Secret Power, and Double Edge, the only other attacking move he learns is Rock Smash. That's it. These problems can be seen in his team fights against the Elite Four and Champion, as Moltres was able to sweep only Agatha, with all of the others having a rock type, except for Lorelei, who had a Slowbro. Oh yeah, Slowbro, I forgot to talk about her. Yeah, she was a pain for all of the fire types. Only one Pokemon on this list was able to beat her, and it was both because of good stats and a super effective move. She's just naturally really bulky. And with access to both Surf for super effective damage, Amnesia to raise her special defense, and John to put her to sleep, she was impossible to beat. Not even Rapidash could do it with Solar Beam. Finally, to close this spot, his ability Pressure isn't really that useful compared to the other ones, since all it does is double the power points when the opponent uses a move. It did help me win against Blastoise on the Champion fight by making him run out of Hydro Pumps, but that was it. Now with all that said, it's a freaking legendary. That's the whole point of using him. And besides, the only fights he lost were the previously mentioned team fights, and both Lorelei Slowbro and Lance's Aerodactyl. So, you have to give him a bit of credit for that. But with all of that, Moltres gets a final score of 47.64. At number 4, this is going to be Charizard, and this Pokemon is pretty freaking good. Because not only did he gain 20 points to each stat, with the exception of his special attack that actually got 29, bringing his speed to 100 and his special attack to 109, but he also gained the flying typing, giving him now Stab Fly and Aerial Ace. Although like with Moltres, I tried both of them and Aerial Ace ended up being more useful. Another move he gained was Hyper Beam, which is the mandatory fully evolved Pokemon move, and Earthquake, now hitting rock types even harder, and being a great addition to his previous coverage moves of Brick Break, Dragon Claw, and Rock Slide. Finally, one thing that I didn't mention on the Charmander or the Charmeleon section, but there's this really cool thing that you can do with Blaze, and that's that before a fight, you can get in range of getting the 50% boost, equip the Charcoal to get an additional 10% boost, and use either Fire Blast for team fights or Overheat for individual fights for instant KOs. With the last one, I think being the strongest special moves that you can use in this game turn 1, because it's 109 special attack from Charizard, plus 140 base power, plus 50% from Staff, and 50% from Blaze. That's an insane amount of damage. And thanks to all of that, he was able to win almost all of the individual fights he was available for. With the exception of Brox's Onix as a Charmander, both Misty Starmie and Giovanni's Kangaskhan on the Rocket Hideout as a Charmeleon, and both Lorelai's Slowbro and Lass's Aerodactyl as a Charizard. Blaze and Sunny Day plus fire moves are just that good. As for the new sweeps, there are 6. Giovanni on Silphco, Sabrina, Blaine, Giovanni as a gym leader, the rival Squirtle team before the league, and Agatha. As for Charizard's negatives, just like with Moltres, his flying typing, while good on the offense, does give him a 4-time weakness to rock-type moves, attacks that almost every member of the Elite Four has. Besides that, I've said it for his pre-evolutions, but not being available for the other rival fights really hurts his score. Especially this time, since I think that was the only reason he missed out the number 1 spot. Probably being able to get over 80 points, since he has the stats, the ability, and the attacks for it. But since that's not the case, he gets a final score of 63.51. For the number 3 spot, this is going to be Flareon. And I'll be honest, I didn't expect him to be this high. Like, everyone talks about how he's the weakest evolution, but he's number 3 on this list. Let's start with the positives, which are mostly the same as the previous spots. Flash Fire as an ability, the classic fire moves, but there's 2 main differences. One is the stats. 95 special attack is good, but 130 on his physical attack is amazing, being the second highest in the game, only behind Dragonite. The second difference is Shadow Ball, an 80 base power ghost type move. As a side note, this is actually the Pokemon that I was talking about that was able to beat Lorelai's Slowbro, as thanks to his high attack and a super effective move, he was able to be the only fire type to beat her. But Shadow Ball didn't limit itself to only KOing Slowbro, as it also had utility for the other psychic types like Alakazam, or it could also work as an alternative for Strength, as it has the same base power but hits some Pokemon for super effective damage. With this, Flareon was able to sweep 14 trainers. Those were all of the rival fights on Pokemon Tower, Erika, Koga, all of the rival fights on Silphco, Giovanni on Silphco, Sabrina, Blaine, Giovanni as a gym leader, and the Bulbasaur and Squirtle rival before the league. Now, even though Shadow Ball and a massive attack stat give Flareon the advantage against most trainers, the problem is the speed stat. Being at 65, it's not enough for a lot of trainers in the late game. Because, for example, against Agatha, even though he has a super effective move, because of the speed issue, he wasn't able to outspeed her Pokemon, and as a result, he fell to Hypnosis from Gengar. The other issue is the physical defense, because while thankfully his special defense is at 110, his defense is at 60 and his HP is at 65, which really didn't help against the rock-type moves on the Elite Four. Finally, while Shadow Ball is incredible coverage, the only other move he has are Bite, Dig, and Iron Tail, which are not great. But with all of that, Flareon ends up with a score of 65.14. At number 2, this is going to be Ninetales. I'll say it right now, but Ninetales is a massive upgrade from Vulpix. Because while he doesn't get any new moves besides the classic Hyper Beam, he gets an incredible boost in stats, getting 35 points to HP, attack, defense, special defense, and speed, and 31 points to special attack. The speed and defense ones are really good, as thanks to those, not only can Ninetales outspeed various Pokemon like Alakazam, but he can also set up substitutes that can take multiple hits to bring down, allowing him to safely set up Sunny Days at the beginning of fights. Anyways, with this, he lost no individual fights before the league, And the only trainers he couldn't sweep were Giovanni on the Rocket Hideout, Lorelei, Bruno, Lance, and the rival as a champion. Lastly, for the negatives, while the issue of the stats was resolved, the coverage and weaknesses ones weren't, as Ninetales has no notable attacking moves to use besides the Fire-type ones, and the weaknesses to Rock, Ground, and Water-type moves still make him unable to get sweeps against most trainers in the league. But with all of that, Ninetales gets a final score of 69.50, greatly improving on the results that Vulpix got. And coming in at number 1 as the best fire type, this is going to be Arcanine. This Pokemon is a beast. Like, I've already mentioned his great performance as a Growlithe, but this is just ridiculous. As a reminder, he has both Flash Fire and Intimidate as his abilities, which are both incredibly useful, but the utility that Intimidate provides is just insane. I'm fully convinced after this ranking that every Pokemon with this ability is going to do great. Anyways, he also has the usual moves for the fire types, but he adds extreme speed to his move pool, which is an 80 base power priority normal move. And I'll be honest, he doesn't really need it. His speed stat is already high enough so that he outspeeds almost everything. So between strength and extreme speed, there's not much of a difference. But speaking of stats, this is where it gets good. Because by evolving, Arcanine gets a massive 40 points to attack, 35 points to speed, and 30 points to special attack, bringing both of his attack stats to triple digits. He also gets way bulkier, getting 35 points to HP and defense, and 30 points to special defense, which in combination with Intimidate make him able to easily beat most individual fights, only losing in the Elite Four against Lorelei's Slowbro, obviously, Lance's Dragonite, and both the rivals Gyarados and Blastoise as a champion. As for the sweeps, there's a lot more. Now he defeats all of the rivals teams on Pokemon Tower, Giovanni on the Rocket Hideout, all of the rivals teams on Silph, Giovanni on Silph, Lane, Giovanni as a gym leader, all of the rivals teams before the league, and Agatha. A total of 13 more sweeps. Now, not everything is great about Arcanine. For starters, he still has no coverage moves besides the weak Dig, Aerial Ace, and Bite. Not like it would do much for the Elite Four, but it would probably help against the rest of the game. Speaking of the Elite Four, his weaknesses to Rock, Water, and Ground still show up because no matter how bulky Arcanine gets, or if he has Intimidate, throughout a battle, he's still going to get worn out by moves that he's weak against. Something that I think would have helped is a setup move like Howl or Growth to take advantage of his high defenses. Because if there's one Pokemon that could have taken advantage of a setup move, it's Arcanine, since I could see how easily he was able to set up Sunny Days at the beginning of fights. But even without that, he was able to get a great final score of 72.42. Anyways, did I miss anything on the ranking? If you think so, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.